This is Creativity Drill with Dr. Dawn and Jonathan Rundman.
Hey everybody, this is your co-host Jonathan Rundman, and our guest today is the amazing Dawn Trautman. She's an actor and a life coach and a walking fountain of inspiration. This episode is really it's a slam dunk because Dawn Trautman rules. So enjoy our visit with her.
Yes, we're rolling.
Yay, we're rolling. I'm happy to be here because you have hardly any women.
I know. Did we talk to you about that, or did you just notice?
Well, I just looked through the list.
It's
a
weighing
heavily on my heart.
It's a problem.
Well, you've invited me. I mean, you're making an effort, so thank you.
Yes.
But of course, we had a woman on the previous episode too, and she was awesome.
Oh no, pressure.
But we had to bring you in from a different state. That's all.
Different time zone.
A
different body of water.
You know, and it's not that we're actively soliciting women to be guests, and we are getting shot down.
Seriously,
they can't.
People don't want to do it.
They don't want to do it, or they don't want to. They can't do it,
They're too busy.
Or they just blow us off.
Wow.
So, but we asked dudes, and the dudes are ready to roll. They're like, "Can I come over now?"
Wow.
Well, I wonder if part of it is if it's someone that we don't know, but we just know of them. If it's just kind of weird to go to these strange people's house at 9:00 at night and
start talking.
Stay there for a couple hours. So,
right, and we are kind of a new show.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been only out for like less than a year, and we have less than 20 episodes at this point. And so one of my goals is I want to get us some press. I'm going to do a press release in the next couple weeks and see if we can get an article in the paper, or maybe appear on a radio show, or just get some media coverage so that we can use that in our invitation. When we pitch to guests,
right,
we can have a little bit of credibility from an outside source saying, oh, look, they get press coverage. And you know, the longer we do the show and the more episodes we do, the better it is too. Because like when you're starting and you have 2 episodes, and then you ask a stranger to come over.
Legit.
It's a little bit.
junior high media class.
Yeah.
You can do bigger asks to strangers once you have coverage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But enough about us. Let's talk about you.
Okay.
Let's introduce our guest, Dawn Trautman, who is in the state of Minnesota, but is based in New York, but travels a great deal, and is one of the most, I think, hyphenated people I know as far as what you do, because you're an actor and you're a coach, and you're do you do writing as well of material, and you do producing of events? And what am I missing here in your list of hyphenate things that you do?
That's a really good list, actually.
And you sing. You sing as part of your skill set when you're in productions. All right.
And
what
dance.
else? And dance.
Yeah. But that sort of all falls in the actor umbrella in my head. That's one bucket. I don't really do plays. It's never acting without singing and dancing.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, if you're on stage in that way, it's a musical.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what brings you to Minnesota now?
I am on my way to a show.
Okay.
So it's a show I've done before, Church Basement Ladies.
Yes, I've heard of that.
Yes. So here you have, no one in New York has, because it hasn't played there, but it plays really well in communities that understand when the center of the community is the church. So it is about Minnesota Lutherans, and so when I audition in New York, they're like, wow, it's the real thing. You know, I can do the accent right on. I tell them I'm Lutheran, you know. They've hit the jackpot. So.
Yeah, it's typecasting.
It is.
It seems like
it's
in the theatrical tradition of what's the really famous recurring play that was really big about nuns?
Nonsense, exactly.
Nonsense, right? It's kind of
those are all here too. Those also all premiere in Minneapolis, just like Church Basement Ladies.
Okay,
actually.
And do you think the audience is kind of similar?
I would, yes. Yeah. It's that sort of understanding that church can be funny crowd. Exactly.
Yeah, and sort of just the social movement of being a lady. Like, what is it to be sort of a rural...
Yes.
A rural lady.
It's good. This Church Basement Ladies has 5 installments, and so I'm about to do the 4th one. They are great because they're all different ages. So there's a teenager kind of going through different stages in each of them. So she's getting confirmed, or she's graduating, or getting married, or having a baby. You know, she has a life stage. And then there's her mother, and then there's a older-ish woman who runs the farm and is very accident-prone and just physical comedy, so funny. And then a really old woman who represents tradition. You know, like they all get out their hymnals and everyone has the red one and she has the black one from before, you know, and just criticizing the way it's done but not helping. And everyone knows that person. It's so funny. Yeah. So.
And which woman are you?
I'm the mother. I always play mid-century mothers, like 80% of the time. Yeah.
In lots of different plays?
Yes. Yep. So it's like my thing.
Mid-century.
Yeah.
That's very specific.
It is, but then if they want that, there I am.
There you are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So when you look at sort of I don't know, not that there is a typical year, but you know, since 2010, or what percentage of your professional life are you working in productions like that versus maybe coaching or leading classes or things like that? Like, what is your, you know, over the course of a year, how do things pan out percentage-wise, would you say?
Good question. Our acting is counted by weeks, and it matters a lot. It's how our health insurance is counted. It's how our pensions are counted. People, you know, sometimes are doing shows and saying, I don't love this show. I just needed the weeks because their weeks are expiring or whatever. So I do 15 to 20, sometimes 25 weeks of shows a year.
That's a lot.
That's half the time.
It's half the time, yeah.
Wow.
So there's a lot of mid-century mothers needed, coast to coast.
Awesome. So going back a little bit, like what has been your path to becoming a professional actor who is vocationally an actor and makes your living that way and is part of the professional organization? Like, is this something you've been doing since college, or is it a more recent thing, or give us the scoop?
Gives the path. I feel like the path really started when I was 3 years old and asked to, you know, I saw dancing on television and my mother knew somebody whose daughter was in ballet and I took ballet. And I think that's an important part of it because dancers, you have to start as a child or you look fundamentally different. You can't start older. I mean, you can dance, but you will look different. So I love to be part of a field where everyone had to have that childhood passion and it was chosen long before it was a profession. It creates a different kind of passion and energy among the whole group because everybody started so long ago. So that was part of the path, just honestly being in church musicals, being in school musicals. I went to high school in Fargo, North Dakota, and they actually had a performing arts high school there. It was kind of an offshoot of the public school, but I have credits on my high school transcript for these things. So
what was your senior year musical and what was your part?
We did Peter Pan in this performing arts arm of the school, and they had to call them Neverland Natives because it was North Dakota and you can't say Indians.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're really there and we wanted to respect them as part of the community. Yeah. So we were Neverland Natives, and I was Tiger Lily's understudy, who's the main.
Awesome. Okay, I had to ask that. Your senior year production.
Yeah.
What was yours?
Annie.
Oh, I love Annie.
Yeah. Have you been in Annie?
I have choreographed Annie. I've not been in it.
What was your favorite scene to choreograph in Annie?
It's a Hard Knock Life.
Okay. Mops, buckets.
Mops. You know,
making the bed.
You got to give people what they came for. You have to have the mops and buckets, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
When you were in high school doing this stuff, did people know you were good? Was it sort of obvious, like, oh, wow, Dawn Trautman's good at this?
That is a good question. I always felt like I wasn't the chosen one. You know, there were a lot of people. I know a lot of people on Broadway because this high school really developed a lot of very good people, and so I was somewhat in the shadow of some of these people.
Are you saying that on Broadway there's a bunch of North Dakotans working on Broadway? Mm-hmm. Holy cow!
Yeah, there's two people there, Kathy and Eddie Gasper, who were very well connected and came to that community and decided to start a dance company and taught at this high school as well, and developed a lot of people at a very high level, a very high caliber. Expected what he expected of his Broadway dancers out of high school people. So there was a high level of training. And before the internet, that's the way you find out. You had to know someone who had been on Broadway or you wouldn't know that it's a possible career.
Sure. So early in your life, you started meeting people who were serious, successful, sort of nationally active theater people.
And he happened to be in things I had heard of. So, Guys and Dolls, The Music Man, like he was in that sort of Broadway golden era in the 60s and then came later on in life to start this.
It's my observation that rural people and Midwesterners, maybe and more especially, oftentimes if you're growing up there, you don't even realize that this kind of work is a career option.
Absolutely.
Because you never see a living human being who actually does that work, and you've never met anybody from your town who ever did it. So it never crosses your mind that it's a possibility. And I think about my own youth in the Midwest in a little town, and there were no role models.
Right.
Period. It just didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's pretty cool that Fargo's a pretty big town, actually. And so,
but it's just always the punchline, right?
Yeah.
It's even a movie, it's a TV show. It sounds remote. Yes.
But when you go there, though, it really is happening.
It is.
And so it's cool that you got a window into a reality that lots of Midwestern kids would never see.
That's one of the things I also appreciate about the Tonys, the only national television exposure that Broadway gets other than little blips on talk shows. Every time, watch for it, every year somebody talks to that kid in the Midwest who has no connection.
Yeah.
So they're very, very aware of who's out there and who feels alone and,
Yeah. I wonder if people on the coasts in showbiz ever consciously sit down and think somewhere in North Dakota there is a brilliant artist, dancer, singer, actor, writer, and we know they're there statistically. We have to find them and let them know that they can flourish because they might not ever find out if, and then you wonder, now that I'm thinking out loud, think of the people who did grow up in a rural place or an isolated place who really are geniuses.
And didn't come.
And lived a life and then died or whatever.
Yeah.
And completely undiscovered and untapped and faded away because they didn't even know.
Right.
Isn't that weird?
There's the role model thing. There's also the infrastructure thing. It is hard to live in New York. You have to be on your game.
You have to know people or to just come and be completely
just show
alone.
Up and do it.
Yeah. It helps to have those connections. And so when you were in high school, did you know already, I want to have this be my my life?
I didn't in high school. I was more programmed like, this is fun and I want to do well, but college was more ingrained in my family system, and those seemed like separate things. Like I don't have a major in musical theater, which is very common now.
What was your major in college? English. And where did you go to school?
Valparaiso.
Oh, Valpo.
Chicago.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. And after you graduated, where did your path lead you then?
I did youth encounter. So the singing comes back, but it melds the worlds, right? Like you're at a college and you're being a camp counselor in the summer and you like to sing. So youth encounters, I was traveling, with kind of a cover band.
Yeah, and you were a camp counselor too.
I was.
Because that's Dawn Rundman's background and my background. I mean, I think the only reason that the two of us are sitting here today is because of being a camp counselor. In fact, that's where we met one another. But as far as developing skills for being on the microphone and being creative, and I tell you, I always try to stick little push pins in these episodes for people listening, and for practical advice, because I'm always got my filter on for practical advice. So here's one: if you are a creative person, and especially if you're a young person, one of the best things you can do to give yourself stuff in your toolbox for the showbiz is to work at a summer camp.
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. And I think many other fields as well, because you are the leader, you're the problem solver, you're on no matter what, and it's showbiz too. You lead the song whether you can sing or not. You're making up a new skit every day. Like, what's better training?
And you have the luxury of a humongous audience that you don't have to draw.
Right, they're there.
They're there. You got 300 people sitting in chairs looking at you.
Right.
You don't have to run an ad in the paper or send an email. They're sitting there and you're on. It's the best.
And they're going to love it.
Yeah, that's true. And they're primed to pay attention. They're primed to participate.
Right.
So summer camp.
You learn a certain amount of comedy too there. what's funny, how to get the laugh, physicality.
Right.
That's summer camp.
And you're learning group dynamics and group psychology. And I always think it's like chemistry. There's a chemical makeup of any community in a room, any assembly. And there's some person or people at the mic and some people or persons in the audience. And there is every single time that happens, it's different. Like no audience is ever the same. No people in the room are ever the same. And it's a chemical thing. Sometimes it's a positive upward spiral. Sometimes it's gross and downward spiral. And you have the power to turn those directions around for good or for not.
Yes.
And wow, it's just, you learn about being a chemist. You're being a social chemist.
Yes, half sociologist, half psychologist, half chemist. The math doesn't work, and it's still all true.
What have been some interesting audience experiences you've had in your career?
Like things the audience did?
Yeah, or just something about the energy, or maybe you've had a performance, after a major event, and the audience was tuned into that. I don't know. Tell us about audiences you remember.
There's always a crazy something, somebody gets sick, that kind of thing that sticks in your head and you keep going, or
like
whatever.
Barfing sick?
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
Okay.
Especially at dinner theaters.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have the free buffet. They maybe don't eat such rich foods all the time.
Yeah.
And then like an hour later, you're in the show, and that happens a lot. So there you go.
Have you had hecklers?
I'm sure that happens, but I do, kind of the wholesome type
and you're in
stuff.
like theater where people are paying money to come in.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not such a cutthroat thing. Because like in the music business, when I was starting out really in my 20s and when we moved to Chicago, I had a couple of years where I primarily played bar gigs. And I had hecklers for the first time. And not a lot, but there were some sizable moments of being yelled at from the audience and you suck, and kind of aggressive people that with a bouncer had to come, and and that is that happens a lot to comedians. It's in the comedy world, like hecklers are part of the chemistry,
the ecosystem.
The ecosystem.
Yeah, the comedians I think are ready and have a comeback.
Yeah,
a little bit prepared, although they fit the situation.
Yeah, but you have to be ready for it and get ready. You have to have that in your toolbox too.
Yeah. With the audiences, something that comes to mind, it's on my radar right now that 1 year ago I opened a show called Witches of Eastwick. And it was, it's been done in London. It hasn't been done on Broadway. So this was a pre-Broadway trial, which was fun because not only is there all the buzz of like, will it transfer? There's a lot of interesting producers and people watching, but also the audience doesn't know it. So you so often do shows that people come to because they love them. And this was completely surprising them all the time. So there was a particular number in that where you could just feel the people get more and more invested. And there's that chemistry of the audience with you. There's also, it was pretty difficult music. It was somewhat physically demanding. So just all those things of like, we're in this together, we can get through it, cardio, whatever, like we're going to do this. And then just people would uproariously yell and clap, and we'd hold the show at the end of that number because people loved it.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. What was your part in Witches of Eastwick?
I don't know if you know the movie. It's like 3 women all sleeping with the same man, and they kind of manifested him. He's the devil come to this small New England town. So I was like a nosy neighbor. Okay. The contrast. So the movie is in the 80s, but this was put into the 60s just for a more interesting contrast. Mid-century housewives.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's your specialty.
Yeah. And I knew the movie was the 80s, and in London it was in the 80s. But they said the 80s in America means different things than it does in London.
Oh, yeah.
So they're like, we're doing 60s, we're going to do women's lib. These women are like figuring out who they are.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are kind of more stuck in the 50s.
Yeah.
So when I found out they had moved the decade, I was like, oh, I could really get this role.
Yeah. You could have done Mad Men.
Yes.
Did you watch that show?
I did.
Did you like that show?
I have seen Mad Men. I did, for the last episode, they wanted people to recreate the first episode. In these little chunks. So some friends and I did that, and Matthew Weiner chose quite a few of ours.
I remember seeing that in your feed.
Yes.
Awesome.
So we're on the Mad Men website.
Yeah. So we can all...
and it's even like your voice is kind of 50s. Even
my vibe, my voice. No one can see me, but my voice, yes.
Well, the way you enunciate and your haircut,
right.
But also just the way you talk has a kind of a retro...
Well, it's classic.
Yes.
Well, it's also like, it's like classic television actress. I mean, because you have a formal kind of quality to you.
Good.
Good diction.
Yes. You're also a little bit. You're also a little bit like a school teacher quality in your
authority.
Yes, it's authority. It's confidence.
It's the camp counselor. Yes.
Well, see, because we don't know you very well. Right. At least I don't. I've only crossed paths with you very briefly. But the time I'm thinking of specifically, most recently, was you were the producer of a big event.
Yes.
Like what was your title? Stage manager?
We don't. We're just the main stage team.
Yeah.
I work with another person behind the scenes to craft the minute by minute what's happening at this event for 1,000 people.
But it's like producer is kind of probably the best title.
Producer,
and I was one of the musicians at this thing. And so when I was meeting you and interacting and even emailing with you, I was aware of that quality I'm talking about you is very clear immediately, even to someone who's just meeting you for the first time. And I personally...
Hopefully in a good way.
Oh, yeah. And I love that. I'm very drawn to people like that. And I actually thought, not only is your name Dawn, but you reminded me of Dawn Rundman, who's my wife and my co-host here in a lot of ways, because of your kind of... you have that sort of scholarly sort of precision. Don't you think?
Dr. Dawn over here, though. You have quite a bit of scholarly precision that I do not.
I wanted to hear you guys talk about your shared first name.
Oh. How have you liked being named Dawn?
It's just one of those givens that I've never questioned. I know where the name came from. My mother had someone she taught before she had children, and somebody in her class had the name, and she just liked it. That's it. So.
It was like a 70s popular name.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of hippie. It's a little bit hippie, and my parents were about the furthest thing from hippie, and so my personal explanation is I was born in Nebraska, where my dad was at his first call as a pastor in this little farm town in Nebraska. So I thought maybe they just heard the farmers talking about getting up at dawn
and said, "Hey!"
And they just liked the word dawn for the time it conveyed. I don't know.
When Dawn and I were dating one another when we were teenagers, I remember reading in our small town newspaper, Dear Abby or Ann Landers, one of those columns, and somebody was writing in about the English language. And they were talking about a linguist or some sort of language expert. And the person said that the most beautiful word in the English language is dawn. And I had just started dating Dawn Peterson, and I was like, holy cow, this is so great. So I've thought of that constantly ever since I was a teenager. And now when I think about the English language, and I just think it's cool you guys have a name that's a noun.
It's unique, and a verb.
And a verb.
And it does have qualities, I think, when you think it's got that hard start and then, on, you can do it. How do you normally say your name if you're talking on the phone with someone? What's a normal way to say your name?
Dawn. But people often think on the phone, not in live, they think I'm saying Joanne. Call centers.
Okay.
So that's odd.
I get a lot of Don. Is this Dawn? And I'll say, no, it's Dawn.
Or in New York, they like Dawn.
Dawn.
Yeah.
Dawn.
I do know also it was a big deal that there's no nicknames for our names. My mother wanted to choose our name, and everybody uses that name.
Yeah. That's great.
So that was another.
Has it been a good name for you from a theatrical standpoint?
Well, yes. There can be no repeats of names. I don't know if you knew this. So I was able to use my name.
Because of SAG?
Mine is called Actors Equity. SAG is movies.
Oh, okay. So SAG is just for film.
Yes.
Okay. But it's true for both.
You have to have your own name.
You have to have a unique name. Yeah. So that's why you get some like Vera Ellen in White Christmas. Somebody must have had her name. That's her first and middle or whoever.
Right.
Yeah.
Lots of women do first and middle.
It's also probably a safety thing for some people.
Oh, sure.
Or I know a fair number of people who've gotten married and actively use the name but have their maiden name as their stage name because that's another way of separating the lives.
Oh, right. So some people want to have a private life with a different name.
Yeah.
And I imagine especially if they have their breakthrough kind of happens early.
Right.
Before they, get traction in their developing career. Are you the only Dawn Trautman
in the world?
No. If you Google, I have found there's a woman at a life insurance company in Colorado. And then and she probably hates that I'm like almost every Google, like I'm the whole first page except for one reference to her. Because there's constant like press releases and reviews and I own DawnTrautman.com. And
maybe she'll come to New York sometime on a trip and see you. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be awesome to meet Dawn Trautman.
I think that to be Googleable is a great thing.
Yeah,
with a unique name.
So if that's another thing, if you're in showbiz, if your name is, I don't know, Bob West or something, it's time to come up with a new name maybe before you even start your career.
Before you register it at Actors Equity.
Because I'm the only Jonathan Rundman in the world, and you're the only Dawn Rundman in the world. And you used to be Dawn Peterson, and when we got married, we thought, well, should we hyphenate? Or I thought, should I be Jonathan Peterson?
Yeah.
I thought that would be kind of fun.
Right.
But then because the Rundman surname is the only one in the world,
really?
And there's not very many people carrying it on, that we should keep it rolling. So she became Dawn Rundman.
You didn't even have to worry about Google at that point.
Right. Exactly. There was no Googling in those days.
But your kids then are kind of safe from that.
That's true. Our kids are very, there's no other.
They're even weirder.
Yeah, they're even more.
Go big
name. Yeah.
Well, speaking of your Googleability, one of the things, I relate to you a lot. I don't know you very well, but we're friends on Facebook.
But the whole world is going to hear us become friends right now in this hour.
We have a lot of people in common. We have a lot of stuff in common. We cross paths once in a while. But what I really relate to about you in a lot of ways is that you seem to be like a real hustler. Like you're out there, you're on social media kind of unabashedly. You share images from your shows and you share your life. Not only with your Facebook friends or whatever, but with
like Instagram.
Yeah, and with and just with the acting community or the showbiz community, and it's unquestionable that you are an active, creative person that's getting stuff done, and that's how I like to run my life and my independent artist life. I'm just inherently kind of a hustler, and I'm sort of unabashed about that. But in recent years, I guess I've run into people who don't appreciate that, and they
then they block you, whatever.
Yeah, or they get sick of me, or they think I'm all about the Jonathan too much or something.
Right.
But that's why I like following you and knowing you're out there, because you make me think, Dawn Trautman's doing stuff and it's cool.
I'm trying to say I'm living the life of an actor more often than come by a ticket. It's sort of about staying on people's radar, them knowing what I'm doing.
So are you consciously doing that so that people who may call you in the future for work know that you're out there doing stuff?
I'm sort of like intrigued with how do you build a personal brand?
Yes.
Like maybe there's another part of my brain that should have been a marketer.
Yeah.
Like I'm just liking that.
I'm the exact same way.
Yes.
Because I even think about let's talk Facebook. I have a Facebook profile that's my musician profile, and then I have a personal one. So technically I could operate those differently.
You could.
But I choose not to. I think of my personal social media presence equally business related as my musician page, because I feel like my entire life, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, is a public witnessing of my creative life.
Yes,
I'm trying to integrate. Oh, I'm not even trying. It's not even deliberate. It's just there, and I feel like it's who I really am. And I just decided, screw it. I'm not going to try to censor myself, and I'm not. And if people don't like it, they can unfollow me.
Right.
You know, big deal.
Right.
Do you ever struggle with that? Like that, I'm being too showbiz Dawn here.
I do kind of have some rules in my head, like not posting more than twice a day is rare. I posted twice yesterday, if you're following that closely, but mostly it's once a day. I always ask people who are I don't want to be posting photos that the other people don't like.
Yeah.
So I really want others to like being in the brand, but I think also
I love that, being in the brand.
Right.
Oh,
Why not?
I love
Write it down.
Being in the brand.
There's your soundbite, right? But I don't want people to be like, oh, I know some people who are taking almost paparazzi photos all the time, like at rehearsals or different things, and then you end up with a weird angle of me. I don't really want that out there. Mm-hmm. So I want people to feel okay being near me, and that I'm going to check in with them before I post the photo.
Well, in acting, and I think in music too, the other people you're working with, your collaborators,
mm-hmm.
are they're in the same boat as you, in that they want to forward their own mm-hmm. Artistic expression, and so if you do ask them to approve how they appear in your digital footprint, they'll really appreciate that.
Yes.
And then they'll want to be affiliated with you.
Me.
And then you'll want to be with them, and it's a upward spiral moment.
It is. It's also, if somebody's thinking of hiring me and they're looking through some of this, I want them to see that I'm active. I'm not just sitting around in New York hoping somebody does something to hire me. Mm-hmm. You know, I want them to see that I'm out there and doing things.
And you make your own stuff.
I do.
So even if
I make these videos.
Yeah. You make these videos and you have a website for coaching, which that's a whole other, I want to have that conversation maybe later in this visit of ours.
Yeah.
Because I'd love to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's clear that if someone thinks, oh, Dawn Trautman, she's an actress, she's in plays and stuff, mm-hmm. I think I'll check out what she's doing. It doesn't take long to realize that you're making your own stuff on top of mm-hmm. getting gigs with other productions.
Yes.
And I love that. I think that's great.
I actually just started a separate website to hold all those little videos I've made. So it's called bigpicturebigpurpose.com. Mm-hmm. And I'm still figuring out the voice of that website and what it'll do. Mm-hmm. But it'll do something, and I feel like it'll present itself if I just keep adding to it and having some mm-hmm. subscribers, and the subscribers are feeding back to me what they want to see. Yep. But it's really just 2 or 3 minute little blips of here's where I'm at, and here's what you can learn from that. You know, one psychological concept. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
It's kind of an actor-y. I speak pretty well, I guess. Yeah. Because I'm an actor. I like to travel, so I'm somewhere. I'll probably do one tomorrow at the State Fair. Uh-huh. I'll find something.
Oh, cool.
And then some little psychological concept.
Do you have a sense of who your audience is for these little clips?
Somewhat. I mean, I do e-courses over time, and so then they join, and I find out a lot about these people. Mm-hmm. I do get more people that subscribe that are in my Lutheran world than in my actor world.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And which is great.
And all of us
I love them.
All of us have sort of these different ecosystems.
Yes.
And it's a Venn diagram. Some of them overlap, some of them don't. Some of them overlap a lot, some not so much. But you can draw from different communities that mm-hmm. will all sort of move the engine along.
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
And actors tend to be very spiritual. They're just not always connected into an organized set of religious beliefs. Yeah.
When they find out you have more institutionalized
mm-hmm.
religion, or that you're not sort of completely mm-hmm. isolated from that, is that a surprise to them, or do they feel like that's very cohesive with how they know you as a person?
I feel like it's cohesive. I feel like early on, sometimes they're worried about it. They're worried that I'm very conservative.
Or that they swore in front of you?
Because they're all gay. And so they're worried that I'm going to...
Yeah, that's the first...
Yeah. I mean, I've been in entire shows without a single straight man in them. Mm-hmm. So just that kind of has to be put on the table really early on, that I'm from a very progressive church, and I point, and it doesn't really always come up. I think as they know me and they're seeing that I'm very, very welcoming and it's not an issue, or I find out over time I get a lot of stories about people who feel they can't go back to their home church, or they were full on actually kicked out. And that's part of their story. That's part of why they're in New York and away from their family of origin. So I do end up getting a lot of stories, especially like I'll just say, hey, I'm going to go to church on Easter if anybody wants to come. We're in some random town somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'll find a Lutheran church, and people then tend to start telling me their stories, oh, I grew up in church, but I haven't gone. Yeah. So it's been fascinating.
I bet that's a lot of stories
It is.
to be entrusted with.
Yeah, but I don't want to take on this like, oh, I'm the minister of the cast. I just kind of let it unfold as it needs to.
Yeah.
Who are some of your role models in the acting world who are people who not only are getting gigs in productions but are creating their own, I don't know, one-person shows or videos or blogging? I mean, do you know other people who you see and you think, oh, that is so cool, I want to do that?
I think more, I go to shows and I see who's playing the roles I want to play.
Oh.
And I'm following their careers, learning their songs.
Individual actors.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I know which Broadway stars sing in a key I sing well in.
Wow.
And I learn their stuff. Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. Well, I ask because that's totally what I'm doing all the time. And I always think it's good to find somebody who's not like, because I'm sort of like you. I'm an indie person who's not famous.
Right.
And so
I love that.
It's not helpful to look at a famous person and imitate them because they're so in a different world that it's not helpful. So it's better to look at somebody who's like 2 rungs up from you. Not 20 rungs up, but just like 2 or 3 rungs up, and figure out what are they doing, where are they going, how are they expressing themselves, how do they appear in the public eye. And I find that's
Instagram
very,
for me as well, seeing what they're doing.
Yeah, isn't it great? Like, and I love Instagram and Twitter for that reason, because you can really see like where are they going, who are they with, how do they appear, how do they carry themselves. I just think that's super interesting. And I think even if I wasn't working on my own stuff as a, trying to get out there and be, I don't want to say the word compete because I don't think I'm competing necessarily, but just kind of, maybe the best word is play ball. Like I want to play ball with them.
Yes.
And, but I think I would be interested even if I wasn't, even if it's just interesting. I'm just interested in how do public figures and people in the arts run their public face.
Yeah, it's interesting too because there's people that are Witches of Eastwick, it's on my brain. It opened 1 year ago yesterday, so there were a lot of posts and talk, and when is this doing? But it had a mixture of like famous people to Middle America and famous people to Broadway. And so when it was opening last year, I put the billboard on my Facebook, and all my Midwestern people said, I can't believe you're in a show with Sally Struthers.
I was going to ask about Sally Struthers. Okay.
And then all the New York people said, I can't believe you're in a show with James Barber or Mamie Paris, or like there were 10 really well-known Broadway people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were like, whatever, Sally Struthers, Yeah.
I remember seeing pictures of you with Sally Struthers.
Yeah, she was my dressing roommate. So
wow,
I spent a lot of time with her.
Now, here's another thing that I don't know if you deal with, but I'm fascinated when I meet people who are really super talented and sometimes super famous. And I don't meet them very often, but sometimes I do.
Yeah.
But you're at least I've been so drilled by the media and culture to not be a name dropper.
Yeah.
And so I never want to, like, as much as I'm like busting at the seams to tell somebody who I just met or who I got to work with, I can tell Dawn, thankfully.
Yes.
And Dawn knows a lot about this stuff too, so it's fun to talk to her. But sometimes I just want to tell
when you don't want to be the name dropper.
But you don't want to be the name dropper,
right?
And so, can I just be weird and ask you here, like, what is it like to work with somebody like Sally Struthers? Is a stone cold TV legend, from one of the most important shows that ever aired,
and changing the entire landscape of television
completely.
Yes,
and definitely a fixture of my childhood, and probably yours too.
Well, a Gen X legend.
A Gen X,
yes,
for Gen Xers, like
for Gen Xers who are little kids, watching television.
Yeah, because it was always like, I didn't know it till it was in reruns. Really.
Yeah, and I remember when it was on, and I didn't understand the comedy.
Yes.
I just remembered being on and knowing it was huge.
Yes.
But what is it like to meet someone like that who is so iconic? What do you learn from her?
Well, I'll tell you, she always gets the laugh. Like, such a highly gifted comedian.
Wow.
Always. And just, you can count on it. You know, she has the timing that nobody else can even come close to matching.
Wow.
So there's that.
Yeah.
She is walks into a room, even, at rehearsal, but also she actually took my mom out to brunch when she came to the show. And she walks into a restaurant and she knows people recognize her and she just controls the situation, like goes around, says hello, all that, so it can be done.
Yeah.
And then she's sitting there having brunch with you.
Yeah.
And just done.
Wow.
But it cuts off this sort of people trying to take a secret cell phone photo. She just offers herself.
Yeah.
And she can sort of decide how long that's going to take.
Wow.
And in a really skillful way that people feel like they had a real experience with her.
Yeah.
But you spend more time with her and it's the same thing, but she's just so good at it.
Wow.
Really welcoming. But she has to kind of be careful of her image. You know, she can't go around outside not looking at least a little presentable. You know, like she's aware of that as well.
Yeah. Wow.
It's sort of, and you wonder how much of that is, muscle memory. The way you'd say someone who's been, playing as a musician for 50 years or 60 years, and they just, inhabit how they play the instrument. Or like you were saying, starting ballet when you're 3 or 5, you're different than if you started later. And I think she's been in the public eye for
her whole adult life.
Her whole adult life. And that, like, what are those skills? Like, where could you map them in her brain? Or it's because it's so different than being a musician or like even an athlete. It's different muscles, but it seems so comparable to that.
It does. And being an actor on television, you're not with the public all the time. Like a musician, you're seeing the audience and they have opportunities to see you live because you're playing a show. But like her being on television, it was like, if somebody sees her, that's an event. It's a sighting, and it's a different chemistry that she had to learn.
It sounds to me like she's inspiring to be with.
She is. She's great.
I find in the rare occasion when I meet anyone like that or get to work with them, I feel inspired rather than discouraged or I don't know. I always leave more feeling better or something after being in the presence of someone like that.
And she's great. She's not just riding it out. She's in the show, doing the work.
Yeah.
Doing theater.
And it sounds like, and she has the talent to back up the iconic status, which is awesome. Like, that's the other thing that I think is so energizing for me in my own life is if I meet an artist and get to know them a little bit in a personal way, and then you have that realization that, oh my gosh, they really are that talented.
Right.
Like, they really are brilliant, inspiring, just creative. Like, that's that'll energize me for a month.
Yes.
To know that it's true about them.
It's true. One of the other people in Witches of Eastwick is the Phantom of the Opera on Broadway. But just to be standing a foot away from him while he's singing, it is that big of a sound. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. You're hearing him before we're wearing mics and before there's a full orchestra, and you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you have a quality about yourself just in how you appear and how you act and how you carry yourself that is different than the average Jane Doe that would come over to anyone's house.
And if I can cycle back, we have this conversation a lot about how I would say you are a woman, not a lady. if that makes sense. Like there's something about someone who is, ladiness a lot of times infers like stepping back so the man can step forward
then there's the Midwestern lady, which is kind of sweater wearing, nest haired, glasses wearing, you know what I mean? Lunch lady.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Lady like lunch lady.
But so, I mean, we've talked about that distinction between those two words, because when I was in Chicago and teaching at a Missouri Synod school there, I was struck by how they would always use the word lady to describe the women in the department who had their PhDs, and they were like, well, the lady's over in education, or that lady is teaching there. And I just thought, that's just really weird. That just struck me as very weird language to hear coming from where I had come from. But it was so culturally, like, that was a term that was used instead of using the word woman.
Right.
So I don't know. That's all sort of
ladies
tied into
are people who serve coffee and wear sweater sets. Right. That's who I play in the shows.
That's who you play in the shows.
Yeah.
But in the real Dawn Trautman, who walks around
getting it done.
And also though, like, I think, like, I don't even know, like, this is a strange thing to say maybe, but, like, I feel like if you were in a room with 10 other people and I had never met you before and I walked into the room and they asked me, who's the person that's in show business? I could tell right away that it's you.
There's a look or something.
Yeah, it's not even a look. There's a vibe. It's X factor. And that's what I think is super fascinating. And I bet it's true of people in the music business, not everybody, but there are some people who are so X factor that it's undeniable, and it makes them born to be a performer. Because, you know what I mean? Yes. And so I bet, I just think of the dozens or hundreds of people you've worked with in casts and in music, and where you must walk into a room and see people once in a while and think, this person is a star.
Yes.
What is?
You can feel it.
You can feel it. Talk about that. Like, and I suppose you get used to it because you see a lot of people like.
Well, it's sort of like the bar is raised. Like they're walking into a room where everyone's an A and they're A plus, so it's just this little extra blip or something.
Yeah.
As opposed to being at a random cocktail party where you're picking out the one actor.
Right.
But yeah, there is something about that.
Are you more used to it than you used to be, just because you're living in New York and stuff?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, if you're walking into a cast, you know who will be there.
Right.
One other thing about that, when we audition, they're required to have a list of who's in the room. And they change it. If somebody walks out, they cross it off. If they go back in, so that you don't walk in and suddenly Stephen Sondheim's there and you're singing his song. And then it flusters you. So you always get to know. So you don't sort of get starstruck walking in to audition.
Oh, so they provide the auditioner a written list of all the people's names.
Yeah, and how to contact them because it's an audition. Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea. But the point is to help the person auditioning not to freak out.
Right. Yes.
Wow.
And there's some, following up, if you want to say to a casting director, you saw me do this last month, and remind them. Yeah. You can track who you're singing for.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to tell you a story about this walking in a room with showbiz people thing. So when I first got started playing music seriously, Dawn and I had just moved to Chicago. And I was starting to play nationally. And Chicago was a cool place to live because it had a infrastructure of sort of support network for industry people. So I would go once a month to a meeting of music business people. Some of them were producers, some of them were artists, some of them were booking agents and press and media people. And so we'd meet like at a nightclub at 6 o'clock before the show started. And we'd just sit around and there'd be a speaker every month from some part of the industry. And then there'd be networking and you'd share business cards and pass CDs around. And I remember one of the first ones I went to, the speaker was a band manager. And he was managing really well-known artists, nationally known musicians. And so he was giving a lecture on like, this is how, you can run your show or run your life if you want to be a professional musician. And so I was really paying attention. And some of his clients were there. And I remember a couple of them, it was women who were in a band, and the band was quite successful and doing very well. And they were there. And they were total rock stars, and not in an annoying way, but just in an undeniable way. Like, wow, it's like from a different planet. And it's just cool. Like these people are cooler than me, Right. And I remember the manager guy, he said, if you're in show business, your job is to be the most interesting person in the room. And you have to And you do that by how you carry yourself, and you do that by the things you say, and you do that by the clothes you wear, and how your hair looks, and how your whatever, the boots you have, any of it. But so whatever it takes, your job is to be the most interesting people in the room. And his clients were there, and they were the most interesting people in the room.
So he did it well.
He did it great.
You know, I had a meeting with an agent earlier this week, and you know, they all kind of say, here's what we're looking for in our clients. And one of her things was, I don't ever want to run into you not looking your best.
Wow.
Because you don't know who else you'll run into. Or what if she gets you an audition that's in an hour?
Yeah.
So either way, but you know, yesterday in Midtown, I met a couple friends there on purpose, but I saw 5 other people. I ran into them that I knew.
Yep.
So it's kind of like you're at work and
because in your life you're at work because you never know who you're going to bump into.
Exactly.
So you have to be on all the time, and I think that's so true. You know, and I truly believe that, and I value that, and I want to be that kind of person. But I can tell when I'm letting it slide. Mm-hmm. I'm very aware, and I know that I have periods of my life, like sometimes a couple years, where I just don't care enough.
Right.
And I'm just a schlub, and I just let it go. And then once in a while, I'll have an occasion to meet somebody who's 2 rungs higher than me or 20 rungs higher than me. Mm-hmm. And what's the difference between me and them? It's this exact thing we're talking about. They are working it.
Yes.
And see, isn't it funny? I always feel like to have to clarify myself. When I say working it, I don't mean it in a diss. I'm not dissing them. I'm not dissing them for being arrogant. I'm not dissing them for being materialistic. I'm saying it because I'm so impressed. By their commitment and their dedication and their authentic.
Yes, authentic comes to mind.
They're authentic and they care and they are on the ball. Mm-hmm. And I'm inspired. When I meet someone like that, I walk away saying, yes, you are working it. And it's awesome. It makes me feel so good. And then they get work because of it. You know, they're busy and they're doing good stuff and they're making beautiful music or they're doing good work. And
you're staying on people's radar.
Totally.
Right? You run into who you need to run into.
Oh, it feels so good to talk to you because I don't know, I've been saying this in other shows, but like, you know how we have these attitudes in the world, which are well-meaning, which is it doesn't matter how you look, it's what's on the inside. Or you don't have to be, or then there's the theological parts of it. You don't have to work for it.
Right.
You know, your worth comes from whose you are, and not because of what you do.
And there's the Midwestern part of don't show off.
There's the Midwestern part of don't show off. And then there's the Nordic culture part of my background, which is humility on a very high level. Mm-hmm. And also talk less, not talk more.
Right.
Or you know, don't appear less. Don't appear more. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like culturally and habit-wise, and I'm working, I'm swimming upstream in the showbiz realm.
Yes.
A lot of the time. Have you?
That was a big thing moving to New York and realizing how much people are comfortable self-promoting.
Yes.
They're all doing the best thing ever and they want to tell you.
Yeah.
Which makes a really great cocktail party. You know, every time I'm in a crowd.
Yeah.
And not just actors, you know, just people. They all are like, I'm doing this and I'm excited and I want to tell you. And if it's not their main job, they're on some board of directors of something, or everybody is just so excited.
Yeah.
And they're going for something in a certain energy that I just don't detect when I'm in Minnesota. Minnesota means something else for me entirely.
Yeah.
And they're all good things, but it's not that.
It's not that.
It's that if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Like New York's hard and you're there and you're doing it or you get out.
Yeah.
And I love that energy.
That's awesome.
And I had to become comfortable with all the self-promotion that's involved in that because of my sort of Midwestern roots.
Yep. Well, usually I do all my touring and traveling solo. So my thoughts are, it's an inward dialogue because I don't have another human being to talk to about it. But a couple of years ago, I had an occasion to tour the West Coast with a band, and I was with a band member in LA, and I'd been there before, but the band had never been there, and so we were like in Hollywood going to a couple meetings and really in the midst of, it was like literally on Sunset Strip and having lunch at the Sidewalk Cafe, surrounded by the whole thing. And the person I was with was depressed and was saying, I hate this town. These people are so superficial. It's all about looks. They only talk to each other because they want something from the other person. They want to get something from the other person. And it's all so surfacey and it's so much hustle. And so the person was really down. And I intellectually understood, like, yeah, I could see how someone could feel that way. Yeah. But I had in my own body and soul, I felt the opposite.
You're giving something too.
I felt energized.
Yes.
I thought, this is the kind of place I want to be because all these people are passionate. They're energetic. They're filled with life. They're constantly cranking out new ideas. Yes. They are searching for someone to work with to make their vision get realized. And to me, it was the opposite of depressing. And so I walked out of LA feeling like 100 feet tall. Because I just felt like I absorbed all that energy.
Right.
Isn't that weird?
Well, I think there's the people who go for things and there's the people who make it okay for them and their loved ones. And that really is, honestly, that's what life is. And that's enough.
Yeah.
Do you know this thing from Harvard Student Orientation where they, you can like choose between two scenarios and discuss it of, do you want to go out and be the fisherman and he catches enough fish that he comes back in like 3 hours and can feed his family that day. And then the next day he goes out, catches enough fish, feeds his family the next day, and that will be his life. And so somebody comes along and says, but if you fish for 6 hours, you could sell half the fish. And then eventually you could have an employee and then you could, change the face of fishing. There was a whole Harvard business plan. And then he said, but then what after that? And he said, well, then you can spend time with your family. And Harvard students are really divided over, it seems like, well, why would you do it if you're only working toward what the first guy had? But some people really do want to change the world. And it is worth fishing twice as many hours a day and making the business plan and going out there. So I think about that a lot lately of there are the people who want to do enough for the next few days, the next chapter of their life. Yeah. And they're still having fun and doing their thing, but there's these other people who are always striving for the next biggest thing. Yeah.
And what we're talking about here, neither one is right. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, neither one is wrong.
Or neither one is wrong.
Neither one's wrong.
They're just different.
Yes.
But the thing is, I think our culture makes one part of them feel bad. Like the go-getter, I don't know. I feel waves of embarrassment about being a go-getter sometimes, And so, but I do agree that both fisherman examples are equally legit.
Absolutely.
Depending on who you are and what you need to just get through the day.
And Harvard wasn't saying one or the other. They're saying, now that you know that, choose your classes based on that.
Yeah.
Do you need to just get your accounting certification and you will be an accountant and that is great? Or do you need to be getting an MBA and changing, everything about the world? Exactly.
Yeah. And isn't it cool that you're right? Some people want to change the world.
Yeah.
And they set out to do it. And that's true in the arts too. Some people want to be like, if they say, I want to be the biggest actor, the most famous actor in the world.
Right.
Or I want to make the biggest blockbuster, whatever.
Right.
Or I want to be the most famous musician in the world. Or the most best-selling. That's like U2 saying, like, we want to be the biggest rock band in the world.
And they can.
And they did. And, and I think the people who end up finally doing it are the people who decide that when they begin or early on.
Right.
And they set their sails in that direction or whatever. Talking about this stuff is the perfect transition to ask about life coaching.
Yes.
Because I think that's another thing about you that I'm really drawn to. I think is really cool. And I've been to that website of yours, and I knew that about you actually when I first met you like a year and a half ago. That she's a life coach too.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that whole thing happened?
Yes, I actually have 2 master's degrees. So one is theological and one is organizational psychology. So a subset of organizational psychology is, by the way, for those who are not in the psychology field, like organizational psychology is dealing with the workplace or groups of people. It's not abnormal psychology. So part of it is...
Or plastic bins.
Or plastic bins. Thank you.
You could be an organizational psychologist and work at the container store. Yes.
Yes. So this is HR and orientation and coaching. So it was a good fit, and it actually is what got me to New York. That degree is from NYU. But as a part of that was executive coaching, and that wasn't quite a fit. And I heard about life coaching. This was before... lately it has exploded and everyone kind of knows what that is. But I heard about it and it was one of those light bulb, I can do this moments. So I got a separate certification in life coaching, and it's been a good other thing because I take it with me. Yeah. It goes with me. I've morphed it many times I'm coaching people one-on-one on the phone or doing online classes, or now these videos will become something. It's still kind of forming. But the other reason it's been good is just like, if you have these degrees, you should use them. I don't know. But it becomes creative. So once a show is running, you're actually paid to do the same thing over and over. And there's fun in trying to be closer to excellent, but it is the same thing, on a long-running show. And actually then coaching becomes the more creative thing because I'm living in their world and sort of doing this mental dance with them to help them move toward their goals and using creative energies with coaching while the show is running. So it's kind of counterintuitive.
And you can do the phone calls or the Skype visits in the daytimes before you have to go to the theater and get ready and that sort of thing. Wow.
It also just gives me another thing. Like if you're out of town and you don't know anyone else in the town, it's like too much theater. Like it's good for me to have something else that matters, and like, oh, well, I have an appointment, so I'm doing this now. Yeah.
Did you have people approach you to be a life coach before you were a life coach? And then you realized, wow, people want me to do this?
I did it. I got that certification so long ago, no one really knew what it was. No one was looking for a life coach. So there was a lot of education.
Okay.
And it still is a bit of a process because it's not, I'm certified, but it's not licensed. So anyone can say they're a coach.
Yeah.
So I'm having to sort of differentiate myself a lot and say, I have a real degree, that I'm really doing this. Yeah. And it's just it's a match of personalities a lot.
So you finished the certification and got it all done and then announced to the world that you were available to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
And then did you get clients right away, or did you have to really go
hustle? A hustle. Now it's a little more word of mouth, but there was some hustling. When I was being certified, I had to coach 100 hours or something. So that was more asking friends if I can do it for free. And some of that morphed a little into low-paying clients. I'm not gonna. When I was brand new, you're not gonna be like, now I'm $125 an hour. Yeah.
And how many clients do you have?
Well, I actually about a year ago dialed it down, maybe a year and a half even, and so I've stayed mostly with people I already had.
Yeah.
There's the occasional word of mouth person that comes to me, so I don't want to say don't approach me. But I just could see that the acting needed more of my primary focus. As I look at people 5 to 10 years older than me that are working regionally, they all have Broadway credits because the regional theater needs to be able to sell that.
Sure.
They need to say we brought in so-and-so from Broadway. So if I get into the next sort of bucket of actors, I have to have a Broadway credit. So I got to work on that.
Do you have one yet?
I don't.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you dialed back your number of clients.
I did.
Do you dial it back to 10 or 3?
To like 3 to 5.
Okay. Are you talking to them once a week?
3 times a month.
Oh, yeah. That seems like a good...
And then ongoing people always have this open door of, they can do a one-off.
Yeah.
I coached you a year ago and now there's just kind of a follow-up.
So if someone is listening to this podcast and they've been considering life coaching and they've just think you're an awesome woman, could they contact you on your website and say, I would love to have you be my life coach?
Yes, absolutely.
What do you help people do as their life coach?
I often help them make a big transition. They can see something big as coming down the pike, and I'm the safe space to consider every angle. Maybe their spouse wouldn't love all the angles, but they deserve consideration, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And even if they're going to be taken off the table, whatever. Or I do coach a lot of church workers, and it's just not okay to be discussing some of these things with anybody in your town, because then it's a rumor and suddenly everyone thinks the pastor's leaving, So transitions, I actually have coached a fair number of women leaving ministry and figuring out how to sort of rewrite their resume. I spent a little time in HR, and then I've learned on the go of, you know what, you actually led $250,000 nonprofit. Like, we need to say that,
Yeah.
Like, you can put your real job title, but then your next bullet point, you public speaking to 1,000 people every single week. They have skills, and they just need to be translated out of church language. I do a lot of that. I do a lot of what really is your passion, a lot of what is the next kind of chapter of life stuff. It's okay to have a next act.
Are there other artists or performers who are clients?
I don't coach a lot of artists, actually. Yeah. There's a lot of sort of informal, would you like my advice if you would like it, and if not, it's okay. You don't want to force that on anyone. So there's some informal stuff, but I find they just are not in the same sort of consistent need of needing the kind of coaching I do. Kind of a little more structured and ongoing.
When did you take the leap into being a freelance artist, actor, life coach? What was that like? And did you have anyone in your life before that who really encouraged you to do that, like mentored you, or just let you know, yes, you could do this?
Right.
It's different than getting your accounting degree and and doing that. Like, what was that like leading up to where you are now?
Pretty frightening. Like, you're taking this leap. It was in 2007. So I was doing onboarding, which is orientation for the Visiting Nurse Service of New York. They employ 10,000 nurses in New York for home health, everything. So there's a lot. Like, we did orientation every Monday, and then there's a whole thing. So that was sort of more the 40-hour a week, do your thing, and it fit my degree, all this. And I was getting some sort of kind of upfront time, but I really felt strongly I was like missing the world by being there from 9 to 6 every day. This strong sense that like the world's passing by and I'm in this building, And so I was finding ways to audition at lunches just when I could. And I did get a booking for A Christmas Carol, mid-century of the previous century, 1860, and Mrs. Cratchit, So I asked them if I could have 3 weeks off for the run of this show. It was a weird little thing where I could rehearse it, but then the run of the show I would need to be. It was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. They're all about Christmas in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And they said no. And they thought, I made a whole like proposal, how I could work remotely, work half time, come in on Mondays. And they said, that just doesn't fit. Thank you. That doesn't fit. We want you, but we need you here. And then I said, here's my 2 weeks notice. And they were really surprised that I would choose a 3-week job. But it was one of those moments that's like so frightening until it happens. And then you're so sure it was the right thing.
Awesome.
What a huge leap.
Yeah.
What a huge leap.
So it was pretty big. I had a few coaching clients, but not enough to sustain. So I really had to like scramble doing that show during those 3 weeks and then make sure I had some stuff set up for the next few months. So, and I did some other side. Like, I don't want to say it was super easy. Like I hostessed at a restaurant, which... How do you get better stories than hostessing in a New York City restaurant? Like, that's where maybe you could learn to be an actor there, But so the acting took a little while to really get rolling. And I just wanted to, I'm really big on being real about there is a pretty long path. So that was like 2007, 8. One of my soapbox issues is this sort of idea of overnight sensations.
Ooh, yeah, get on the soapbox.
when you're in it, you see how it took such a long road, and I don't think it does anyone any service. You know, I've known some people on reality shows. There was a reality show to pick the leads in the show Grease for Broadway, and there was another one where I happened to know some people in it, or like Leah Michele from Glee, you know, and they're like, oh, she came out of nowhere and she sings like this. Well, you know, we'd seen her in 4 Broadway shows already. She didn't come out of nowhere. She did the work. She's had great coaches. I don't want to undersell what she does.
Yeah.
And she's just one example, but she has worked on that since she was like 8 years old. She was the little kid in Les Mis, you know?
Oh, yeah.
She was the tiny child. And other shows. Like, she did the work.
Yep.
She didn't just show up at age 20 on Glee and sing like that.
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, so if you are 15 and you're not that good, you would just quit, right? Because you're behind. But it is that much work, and it does take that long.
Yeah.
And I just that's one of my messages that I always want to be giving to the next generation of, you got to do the work.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you'll pop or not, but you're doing the work. You need so much infrastructure.
Yeah.
So much. I know another person who, she is 21, but she's going to be Maria in the Sound of Music tour. They're rehearsing right now. Like, this is like one of the most coveted things, the 50th anniversary national tour of the Sound of Music. She's lovely. She's great. And she has been working it.
Yeah.
You know, like, she came all the way up through the ranks and worked so hard. Yeah, like, it doesn't come out of nowhere, even if you're youngish.
Yeah.
So that's one of my soapbox issues.
Yeah.
Do the work.
That's great. And to realize that, to get any traction, sometimes it's going to take years. And that's fine.
And perseverance is what it takes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It gives me hope, actually. If perseverance is going to work, then I'm in.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I was just telling Dawn, we just went to the beach before you came over.
Nice.
Because it was hot out, and we thought this is one of our last chances to go to the beach.
Are you warm now? Should I turn the AC on?
I'm
I
fine.
turned off. You're okay?
Yeah.
All right.
And so we were driving to the beach, and I was talking about how I got a gig today on Facebook.
Yay.
And the only reason I got the gig is because I had posted on Facebook yesterday saying I've got this open day in California in about a month, and I wanted to play, but I don't have anything to do, so I just threw it out there. And so I got a Facebook message from someone who I don't know, who I don't remember, and she said, "Oh, I can book you, and you won't remember me, but we met like 10 years ago at 2 different places." And so she told me where we had met 2 different times, but then she said, you know, you're not going to know me because we didn't really hang out or anything. But I thought to myself, wow, it's because it's a long time payoff.
Right.
That seed was sown 10 plus years ago when I talked to her briefly. And we've never seen each other since. But because of the internet and because of perseverance, we floated across each other in cyberspace, and she said, I'll book you right now. And I got a gig, you know.
This theater I'm going to right now, I worked there 3 years ago. I mean, that's not 10, but it's just kind of out there, and you keep the relationship, and you don't know when that, it doesn't feel manipulative. Like, I honestly like these people.
Right.
I'll interact with them. I'll just make sure I'm doing it.
Exactly.
Because I like them.
Yeah. And you're right. It's not manipulative. And because I put myself in the shoes of the other people, like, they want artists. They need talent. They need actors. Some people need actors. Some people need musicians. And so it's definitely not manipulative to stay to stay connected to them, because you're helping them, they're helping you, and everybody's goal is the same. They want to make a great show.
Right.
They want to have a good show, or put on a great concert, or have a beautiful moment with the audience, or give their community an artistic experience. And everybody wins, you know. So there's no shame in putting
it out there.
It's not like you're a whore or something, you know. It's a mutual helping for everyone.
That's been a helpful thing with auditioning. Somebody said to me early on, they have a problem to solve. They have already advertised a show, and they do not have people to do it. So they are hoping somebody walks in that can do this part. You will solve their problem.
Exactly.
Like, come in with that energy. Please pick me.
Right. Yeah. I got that epiphany, because just listening to a podcast. I was listening to some showbiz, like, comedy podcasts in the last year, and one of the people on the show said this line that I think about all the time, is that when you go to an audition, realize that the casting director that's there, they want nothing more than to cast you.
Right. And
they want they want to be done.
Yeah.
They want you to be the person, and they want you to be awesome. And so it's nothing to be afraid of or nothing to be stressed about, because, they want desperately for you to be the dream person. And that's a great way to look at it.
We all want the same thing.
That's right.
Let's do it.
It's really a good thing to remember.
I'll help you solve your problem.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. That's what Dawn talks about with
marketing
with your work too.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not selling, you're helping them solve a problem.
Yeah. What are your pain points?
Right.
Help me solve, or I can help you solve them.
You listen to this. This is beautiful, practical advice. Oh, you listeners, I'm so glad you listened to this. I hope this makes me feel so good just talking about this. And I hope that if you've got your earbuds in, listening to this podcast, or you're in your car and you're thinking about your own art, this is huge for you. This is huge for everybody. And it's not because Dawn Trautman's awesome or that Creativity Drill is a great podcast. It's just the facts. It's just the facts. It's awesome.
Well, you're awesome hosts as well. So it's the shared wisdom.
Well, thank you.
Very much the shared wisdom.
Isn't it fun to talk about it? Like
yes.
with your colleagues, do you ever just sit around and talk about this stuff? Because
the craft.
Yeah, the craft and the psychology.
And the business
the
around
chemistry of showbiz. You know?
A little bit of maybe the craft a little. I do remember being at a show and someone came back from the grocery store and was like, I met the manager of the grocery store and he just wants to manage the grocery store. And I had this moment that he's happy managing that grocery store. And we are all going after something bigger. Like just the shift of being at the grocery store and coming back to where we were. We're all like, great, this is great. What are we going to do next? And, people are always in between shows asking like the orchestra director to play something to tape a next audition. And everybody's going after something. It's just, that shift.
You need the grocery store manager.
You do. They're running the world.
You need groceries.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's bad. Like, what would we do if almost everybody else didn't run the world for us?
Yeah.
And what would they do if their mind was never expanded into those creative realms? Like, that's a real human need.
And this is where I can hear my theological bells ringing because I think about the body. It's the theology of the body.
Yes.
And the foot can't say to the nose, all that stuff, right? And we need actresses and actors and directors, and we need grocery store people and taxi cab drivers. And it's also it's theology of vocation. And it's the value in the daily work of all these people and the grand orchestra that we are.
Yes.
That makes us all able to live and function and have relationships and all that stuff. It's awesome.
It is.
Right?
Yes.
It is.
Thank you, grocery store manager.
Yes.
So we have just a couple more things that we want to ask you. But I want to ask you about tour life. You are out half the year.
I am.
Wow. What? And are you in a hotel? Are you in like extended stay America?
Some of the tours that are moving from town, like if you have a show come downtown to the Orpheum, those people are in sometimes extended stays.
Yeah.
I more often do that. I'm at one place the whole time. Like the people who come into the Guthrie are just at the Guthrie and then they go back to New York. So,
but where are they sleeping?
So those kinds of theaters own cast housing.
Oh.
And so they just, cycle the next actors through.
What does it look like? A condo?
It's different a lot of places. When I'm at summer theaters, sometimes they buy like a motel and you're all living in it.
Is it fun, like camp?
People think that a lot. I would say there's always like 3 22-year-olds who want that experience and they can have that. But it is like people are in their profession. Like some people bring their kid and the show is providing a babysitter. And, it's like their real life. Or if there's kids in the show, there's child wranglers and tutors and that. But it's our actual job. It's not like fun and games, although people are generally friendly. There's always a company manager who is taking care of everything that's not on stage.
Yeah.
So they're figuring out the housing. They would help you if you got hurt or whatever, or if you wanted to rent a car or whatever. But they always do a few if you would like, you can do this fun thing today. Yeah. Like go to a baseball game.
And what do you do with your daytimes? Or do you try to rehearse every day? Do you work on lines every day?
Tap dancing?
Yeah, tap dancing.
Does this show have tap dancing?
It doesn't, but I have to record. I have to record something and send it back to New York in the next couple days that includes tap dancing. So I had to quick switch out what's in my carry-on and what was shipped to Missouri, so that I had my tap shoes with me. Yes.
You should wear those to the airport when you go back.
I know. It's always a problem. I always just kind of yell out to the scanner guy that I have tap shoes because they never can figure it out.
Oh, sure.
So I just go, I have tap shoes, and then they're like, oh. Yeah.
When you go to Missouri for this show, how long are you going to be there?
Just 5 weeks. No.
Just 5 weeks? I thought
my last one was 10.
I thought you were going to say just 5 days.
No.
5 weeks. So you you'll feel like you live in that city.
Yes, and I've been there twice before.
So you'll get to know the metro area, the mall, the restaurants.
One. It's like Nowheresville, USA, but it's great.
Gosh.
I should ask them. I mean, it's a beautiful theater, maybe a vaudeville stop. It's halfway from Kansas City to St. Louis, and I'm feeling like they couldn't go that far long ago in one day, and they must have stopped there.
Really? So you're following the path of the vaudeville tradition from 100 years ago, in a way?
Yeah.
Because they set that
old theater.
place as it's a vintage building.
Right, yes. It is that old, yeah.
So you really are, it's a if these walls could talk moment.
Right.
Or if this stage could talk.
Like the gypsies.
Yeah.
Yeah. The people, they're called gypsies, the people who are in the ensemble that just go from show to show. And so there's a gypsy robe that gets passed down each time a Broadway show opens to one of the chorus members.
Oh, that's beautiful.
The one with the most experience. So they all gather. This is a thing before any Broadway show opens. That night, like an hour before curtain, everybody gets in a circle, and the person from the previous show that just opened on Broadway comes wearing the robe and announces who the next one is.
I had never heard of this before.
Yeah, it's a big tradition that's never broken. So they do who's doing their Broadway debut tonight and do a little thing, and then who's the most experienced person in the end. Yeah.
That is so cool.
And then they add something from the show, so that by the end of the season, this robe is filled with every show that opened.
Wow.
So you can go see, like at our Union building, you can see the past robes. And so you see everything that opened.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have never heard of this before. That is really interesting. And what about your social life? If you're in the middle of Missouri for 5 weeks, like who do you hang out with?
Well, this person that plays my daughter has played my daughter in 4 shows, so I know her very well. She also has done Happy Days with me, and we were Marion and Joni. So she's great, and she's near my age. She's just shorter than me, so that's why. And yeah, I mean, that's another reason Facebook and all of those things.
Do you see
helpful.
friends from your personal life who just happen to live in the general area and then you hang out?
I get a lot of that. I get a lot of that. I also, like, when I'm in the Midwest, then I know more people and people come to the shows. Yes.
Do you go on dates and stuff?
Not really. I could explore that idea, but no. I feel like actors are very exotic.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot for someone's brain if you've been living in the middle of Missouri and this person that lives all over the country is suddenly there.
Do some actors date locals?
Yes, definitely.
Is there some debauchery? Showbiz debauchery on the road sometimes?
Yeah. Debauchery. Who says that word? I love it.
And then he laughs.
Yes.
It's so funny because, like, the touring musician's life is you see all the same towns, but only for one day at a time.
Right.
You get 5 weeks at a time.
Yeah. And even the tour, well, there's non-equity tours that move every day, but a tour with union actors would stay a week just because of what it does to your body to be able to perform well.
Yeah.
It's one of the protections.
Wow. I love that kind of life on the road. I just think it's interesting. And do you love being on the road?
I do love it. I honestly like New York. I don't just go there to audition. So I do feel a pull back there. My pastor there, actually, one of the times I was leaving, she's like, I feel like you belong in New York in a spiritual geography kind of way. I was like, well, I'll be back. It's fine.
But don't you live there?
I do live there, yes.
So that's your
I'm just saying some actors just use New York to audition.
Oh, okay.
And get out quickly.
Yeah. So you identify as a New York. I live there. You've got a New York driver's license.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there 12 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, this has been awesome.
Good.
It's so much fun. I don't think we had we haven't had like a touring show actress before. We've had other kinds of acting people, but not who's doing it the way you are. And so this has been very educational and so much fun.
Good.
Super fun.
I always want our podcast guests to be available to the listeners if they want to be. So how would you like to be found if people listening want to check you out, become a fan of yours, come see you do your thing in a show, or maybe even book you if they're putting on a show?
Absolutely.
Or need life coaching.
There's so many things.
Tell us, how can we reach you?
My website is dawntrautman.com, and my last name is Trautman, very German, dawntrautman.com. So from there, you could find everything else just to kind of follow and get a sense of this life. Probably Instagram is the best. So that's Dancer Dawn with no E. So DANCRDAWN.
Oh, I've never, I'm following you on Facebook, but I didn't know about Instagram. I'm going to check that out.
I do more photos on Instagram, so you get more of a sense of the ebb and flow.
Oh, yeah. Instagram is my favorite platform.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
I'm loving it.
In fact, some of our other podcast guests recently, we've been talking about social media, and lots of people are liking that the best.
Yes, I love it. You
are
tell
you on-
such a story.
Are you on Twitter too?
I am, and it's the same Dancer Dawn.
Okay.
With no E.
Cool. Everybody, follow Dawn's adventures
follow me.
In showbiz and go see you perform.
Yes, you'll never know. I might be in your neighborhood. I don't know where I'll be next.
Really, you don't know what happens after this Missouri show. You don't know. Church Basement Ladies in Missouri for a while.
Yep.
And then who knows?
Maybe this audition I'm going to tape the tap dancing will pan out.
Do you like the wintertime cycle or the summertime cycle?
In terms of what?
Like when you're out doing gigs, is it better during the school year, or is it all the same?
It's kind of all the same. Summer gigs tend to be shorter because a lot of places rotate through their shows quickly to catch vacationers, or they're in rep. So it's just a different energy to it.
So Church Basement Ladies will take you all the way to Halloween, pretty much, or a little before.
Yeah, just October 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And then who knows? Then
I do have a meeting in California actually on October 12th. So I know what's the very next day, but then I don't know.
and that meeting could lead to something.
Right.
And it's your job to pay for that ticket and fly out there.
Well, this particular one I don't have to pay for.
Oh, that's good.
Am I being like specific and vague?
Oh, okay. I was just wondering the mechanics of it. So sometimes people fly you in then if they need you for something.
For that particular meeting, yes. But if I want to go to a huge callback, I would most likely have to fly myself to New York.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. Will you come on again someday?
Sure. I come to Minneapolis a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I hope you have more things that I can even give you.
Oh, yeah. We should talk again sometime.
Okay.
I could just keep going all night long.
My question to you is, what would you tell your kindergarten self?
I would tell her it's okay to shine. Do you want? Kindergarten, it was somewhat academically easy, the academics of kindergarten. And I felt like I shouldn't get every answer right or shouldn't always know. But I had an older brother. I'd been tracking, I'm that kid that wanted to keep up. So kindergarten was in no way challenging, and I felt like I had to hide that. So I think there's a little bit of that I'd want her to just shine, and that's okay to know all the answers without being a know-it-all.
We have recurring themes here throughout this episode. I love it. Well, there's a thread going on.
Wrap it up. Yes, with
it's
the
awesome.
humble, the Midwest.
It feels so good to just hear someone verbalize it. Thanks, Dawn Trautman. You rule.
Thanks, Dawn.
Keep up the good work.
Dawn.
Listeners, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Creativity.